Is mechanistic medicine the only kind that really works? According to the mechanistic materialist orthodoxy, the belief system or worldview that we've been discussing in this series, the body is a machine. Your body, my body, is just an inanimate machine. We're lumbering robots, to use Richard Dawkins' phrase. And the body, therefore, as a machine, can be treated by medicine chemically or physically. If you leave the mind out of it, then you get mechanistic medicine. Of course, it's impossible for mechanistic medicine to ignore minds totally, because there are a lot of people who are mentally ill, a lot of people are suffering from depression, and so on. But the mind is ignored as much as possible in favor of chemical and physical methods of curing people. There's no doubt that these work, and there's also no doubt that mechanistic medicine, modern medicine, has been extraordinarily effective. Over the last century or so, there's been a tremendous reduction in infant mortality, enormous increase in life expectancy, reduction in epidemic diseases, the development of antibiotics, enormous improvements in surgery, and, of course, the triumphs of modern dentistry. I don't know anyone who would want to go back to 19th century or medieval dentistry. And I got some sense of this when I was living in India in the 1970s, in the bazaars of Hyderabad, where I was living. You could see dentists plying their trade using time-tested methods. They had pairs of pliers, they had things to strap people onto the chairs so they couldn't move or writhe in agony. And they did have drills which were attached by a series of pulleys to bicycle wheels, and they had assistants who pedaled away to make the drill work. And I went to a somewhat more sophisticated dentist, but they had none of the modern methods of filling teeth. So I had a filling I needed, and I was rather surprised to see the dentist mixing up the filling solution by mixing sand with araldite, which he put into my tooth as a filling. So whenever I go to the dentist, I feel enormously grateful for these enormous improvements in technique. And on a couple of occasions in my life, I've had to have surgery after injuries. Again, I felt enormously grateful that these things exist. We all, nearly all of us, are beneficiaries of modern medicine. However, not all these discoveries of modern medicine depend on the materialist worldview. For example, in the 19th century, the discovery that many diseases are caused by germs, the germ theory of disease, didn't depend on a materialist or mechanistic worldview. Germs are small organisms. You can see them through microscopes in the case of bacteria. And the hygiene, the enormous improvements in medicine that happen through hygiene, washing of hands, antiseptic procedures, and so on, aren't particularly dependent on a materialist worldview, nor is the use of antibiotics, nor indeed is surgery. I mean, everyone's always known, in the ancient world, surgeons knew that people had bones and that bones needed to be set and that they'd then heal themselves. So many aspects of surgery and indeed of medicine depend on the self-healing properties of the body, which have been an essential part of curing and healing all along. And in fact, to put it in context, all animals and plants are able to resist diseases to some degree and heal after damage or wounding. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. Our ancestors, our pre-modern human ancestors and our pre-human ancestors, our mammalian ancestors, and before that our vertebrate ancestors and fishes and so on, all had healing systems, immune systems, which enabled them to survive. And every single one of us is here because generation after generation of millions of generations of ancestors, right back to the origin of life, have had this ability to survive and withstand injuries, assaults, and diseases. So this is built in to our nature. And a lot of modern medicine depends on these healing responses. The whole processes of inoculation and vaccination depend on the body's immune response. It's not just the stimulus that's given to it, but it's the response of our own bodies, which happen anyway when we get diseases if we survive them. So it's important to recognize that not all these triumphs of modern medicine, which are so impressive, necessarily depend on the mechanistic materialist worldview. Many of them are pragmatic and would have been discovered, whatever the worldview, as long as there was a spirit of inquiry and discovery. Many improvements in health have come about not through medicine, but by public hygiene, the reduction of air pollution, and so on. When I was a child, there were appalling smogs in London, pea-soup smogs or fogs, caused by the fact that most people were heating their houses by burning coal. And all sorts of legislation has cleaned up the environment, at least in some countries, so that many fewer people die of environmentally induced diseases. The control of asbestos and things has reduced the number of people who die of asbestos getting into their lungs. So there have been all sorts of factors at play in the improvements of health, not all of which have depended on this ideology. However, the funding of medical research is strongly ideologically driven in most parts of the world. Here in Britain, for example, the Medical Research Council, which spends almost £1 billion a year of public money on medical research, ignores completely, or almost completely, complementary or alternative forms of medicine in favor of mechanistic medicine. And in fact, the medical research facilities have now been concentrated in a huge institute in London called the Francis Crick Institute, named after Francis Crick, who, together with Watson, worked out the structure of DNA. Crick was a physicist and a molecular biologist. He had no medical qualifications, never treated patients in his life. And naming the institute after him makes it very clear that the emphasis is on molecular aspects of medicine, a kind of reductionist approach. So it's all about molecules, genes, proteins, enzymes, and so on, leaving out all the holistic aspects of health. So our current system, the official system, is heavily influenced by this materialist ideology, and that affects the way hospitals are run, the way health services are administered, the way health insurance companies work, and the way that medical research is done. But modern medicine is at its weakest when it's dealing with social aspects of disease, or emotional aspects, or spiritual aspects, or mental aspects of disease. Many aspects of medicine are, in fact, to do with lifestyle. Smoking has very bad effects on health for many people, and that is something where medicine played a part in helping to show the harmful effects of smoking, even though the smoking lobby and the smoking companies tried to muddy the waters and obscure the evidence quite successfully for years. Finally, the message got through, and fewer people smoke today as a result of public education policies. One of the biggest threats to health on a worldwide scale at the moment is the obesity epidemic, where about a third of the world's population are obese, and many more are overweight. This is a hugely important problem. It's leading to a decline in life expectancy for many people, because obesity carries with it the risk of many other diseases, including cancer and diabetes. So that's a kind of lifestyle problem. Medicine can shed some light on that, but not a lot. And dealing with that will require all sorts of other initiatives that are really outside the sphere of medicine. And then addiction is another lifestyle problem that causes a great deal of ill health. And again, that's something that goes rather beyond the scope of mechanistic medicine, which ignores people's desires and needs, which lead to addictions, and also depression, which is the endemic mental disorder of advanced secular societies, millions and millions of people are on antidepressants and suffer from depression. It's not the fault of medicine they suffer from depression. One could argue that the worldview behind modern medicine, mechanistic materialism, is itself depressing. And if you live in a society where people think we're here by chance, there's no purpose in life, the universe itself is purposeless, it all goes blank when you die, and so on, this depressing worldview may well contribute to depression, as well as excessive individualism, which leads to the breaking up of social bonds. The more isolated people are, the more separated, the more alienated, the more they have a sense of futility, the more likely they are to become depressed. And again, that's not something that the mechanistic materialist worldview is able to help with very much. And the best that can be done by most psychiatrists is to give people drugs that suppress the symptoms of depression to some degree. However, one of the things that research in medicine has revealed is that there's an enormously powerful effect of people's beliefs and expectations and social support on healing. People who are depressed have less active immune systems, they're less able to resist diseases. So their mood, their attitude, and the social systems that contribute to it have major medical effects. People who've had heart attacks or other forms of illness recover better if they're married or have a close friend or keep a dog or cat. Social companionship is a very important part in alleviating depression and ensuring mental health and physical health. The placebo effect, which drug trials have to take into account, shows how important these other factors are in people getting better from diseases. In many drug trials, the placebo, the blank pill that people think might be a new wonder drug, works as well as the new drug being tested. Placebo surgery also works. People who had mock operations to cure angina, which was at one time done by operations on the chest. They were cut open and stitched back together and didn't know that all that had happened is it had been cut up and stitched back together, got better, as well as people who'd had the real operation. So the powerful effects of placebo responses have to be taken into account in modern medical research, which is why the gold standard is the placebo-controlled double-blind trial, where neither the doctor nor the patient knows which people have had the real drug being tested or the blank pill, the placebo treatment. Placebo effects depend on people's beliefs and expectations. If they think they're going to get better, if they think they're being given a new wonder drug, it works much better than if they're told, oh, you've drawn the short straw, you've got the blank pill, there's other people who've got the real drug, but you haven't. Then it doesn't work as well. It works when people think they're going to get better, when they have hope that they're going to get better, and when they feel that they're going to be well looked after. My colleague, Nicholas Humphrey, who's an old friend of mine, has come up with an evolutionary theory of placebo responses, which I think is very interesting. Humphrey points out that what placebos show is that we're holding back some of our healing response, our healing capacities, which can be released by the placebo effect. The question he started with is, why are these healing capacities which we have within us inhibited? And his evolutionary argument is this, that in the past, if you threw everything you'd got in terms of the antibody response and healing responses to dealing with an injury or a disease, what would happen if another injury or disease came along? You'd have nothing in reserve. You'd have used up all your healing capacity. And so he thinks that we've evolved so that we only use part of our healing capacity in response to diseases or challenges, unless we feel secure. And in a placebo-controlled trial, patients know they're being looked after, there are nurses, they're being cared for, they're in a secure environment, there's a hope of getting better, they may have the new wonder drug. And these are conditions that actually improve their chances of healing. We also know that there are strong mental effects on medical responses in many other ways. It's been known for a long time that hypnotic states can induce changes in the body. When I was an undergraduate at Cambridge, one of our physiology lecturers was a hypnotist, and in my college medical society, he gave a riveting evening demonstrating the power of hypnosis. He found people who were susceptible to hypnosis, and he did a trial on one of my fellow students. And when he was hypnotized, he told him that he was going to test how his skin responded to a lighted cigarette. And he took a pencil, an ordinary pencil, and pressed the pencil against his arm, pressed it fairly hard, and told him it was a lighted cigarette, then withdrew the pencil. And of course, if it was just a pencil, it would be a slight mark on the skin for a little while, and that would be that. But in fact, what happened was within a fairly short time, a blister came up of exactly the kind that would have happened if he had been burned by a lighted cigarette. It's also been known for a very long time that some diseases can be cured, as it were, magically. Charms for warts have been known for a very long time. There are certain people who claim to be able to remove warts by spells. Sometimes people say you should touch them with potatoes. Some people say you should leave things out in moonlight and then touch the wart with them. There's all sorts of quasi-magical cures for warts, many of which actually work, showing the power of the mind over the body, as does the hypnotic blistering effect.
Find out more on advire.life.